AKA Patters, today for Wildstorm Wednesday, we're getting into the one issue, the most significant issue I read as these books were dropping, Stormwatch Zero. I was Team Stormwatch, I wasn't Team Wildcats. What the heck am I talking about? We're exploring the beginning of all of these storylines, all of these threads, and it starts with Zero for Stormwatch. Let's get into it, rock and roll. AKA Patters, how you like the no hat look? Yeah, we're struggling to make up episodes, we're struggling to put out episodes. It's a lot of hard work. It's chaotic. AKA Pad here though, Peter A. DeLuca here, and some social media networks, AKA Pad 69, the magical number, and also known throughout Philadelphia, PA, Europe, and the incredibly beautiful, vast multiverse as the eclectic one. We're very eclectic here. We connect these dots, we put these things together, and we present them to you in ways that no other comic book commentator is ready for. And why is that? Because, guys, in my earlier life, long ago, I left it all. No movies, no comics, no cartoons made for children, no toys, no action figures, no comic shops. And I went into corporate America and went into design, went into graphic design, logo design, ad design, committed everything to that in Center City, Philadelphia. And I viewed that as somewhat of a pedigree to gain a little bit more of a perspective on these other crevices and careers I wanted to explore. And one of those was the comic book industry. So we're going full circle here, and the last few years, your boy over here has been hardcore in discussing Wildstorm Productions, and we call this Wildstorm, Wildstorm Wednesday 2.0 because I'm rebooting my own study of this 90s publishing powerhouse, and I do believe that Wildstorm Productions, they're up there more than what Rob Liefeld was doing with Extreme Studios, even though I believe that Rob Liefeld's Extreme Studios had better books and better crossovers, and they were a heck of a lot easier and more fun to follow. Everything with Chaos Comics and even Dreamwave Productions, they are close. Chaos Comics is so close from taking that top bag, but Jim Lee and everything he was able to do with Wildstorm Productions, and how Wildstorm Productions really did become a extended arm of the taste and style of one Jim Lee, and the people he brought along and brought up through the industry. He dabbled in animation, completely failed, essentially lost the company through animation investments. That's your Gen 13 movie. But went into trading cards, unsuccessfully competed with the X-Men 1-to-1 or Saturday mornings with Wildcats. So there's just a lot there. There's a lot of what I like to say meat on the bone when it comes to Wildstorm Productions. So with Wildstorm 2.0, we're just attacking the continuity. Some of it is the retcon continuity, so we're going in that order, but then we're also going in publishing order too. Welcome to comics. This stuff gets complicated. So as a kid, number one, I was disappointed that this Stormwatch Zero issue wasn't a full cover. I call this a full cover. This is like, they call this double cover. But come on. We get a ad here for Jim Lee's Skycaps. We will be doing a live unboxing of Jim Lee's Skycaps also, by the way, coming up. A little teaser there. But yeah, I was so disappointed. I wanted, at this point, every Zero issue had like a double cover. It was just something to expect. And Stormwatch was way more tangible at the time than its counterpart, Wildcats. Let's not forget, Stormwatch, Wildcats, Wildstorm Productions. This is where we get the namesake from. Because Stormwatch essentially were the world's police. They had a floating, giant, beautiful looking mega fortress that looked over Earth, and they would just deploy heroes as, as needed. And So we would later get this idea solidified with the Justice League Unlimited or Justice League animated series, that just for forever now, the Justice League owns the idea of the floating fortress or the floating headquarters above Earth. They just, like anyone that does it at this point, they get that comparison. But Stormwatch made it cooler, made it relevant way before Justice League did. And I was on board. I loved the idea of the world police being superheroes. And a lot of these characters, Battalion namely, he's our team leader. He has a perfectly structured 2-year and 5-month arc. The rise and fall of Battalion. Also, the rise and fall of his brother. It's, and Stormwatch kind of, at one time, was more of a family-driven superhero drama. What am I talking about? Well, a lot of that starts here. We get the premiere of some amazing characters. We get the premiere of Backlash and what we will call like Stormwatch 1 or Stormwatch Prime. This is also an element that made so many of these Wildstorm books so effing cool. They gave you first iterations of teams relatively early when you first explored the team or knew about the team. Something very similar happened with Gen 13. Gen 13 went all the way back to Lynch and Gen 12, and then we would get Team 7, which was all of your popular Wildstorm characters previously inhabiting a secret military strike force. More on that later. I mean videos down the road, friends. So I want to showcase this. I want to show it off to you guys, and I want to kind of pinpoint the reverse engineering of what happens in issue 1, and then everything that they explore here in issue 2. And yes, this is I call this a character study issue 0, because we're getting into the mind of Battalion. Hey, do I have to say it? Worth reading material. Let's hit that drawing table. Here we go, aka Padders. Let me just tell you, alright, again, I feel like this is a little bit of a routine now. Some hours have transpired since I recorded that intro. A hell of a day at work. But guess what? At the end, the light at the end of the tunnel, we get to read, you get to read stuff that really puts you in the right mind, in the right frame, we'll call it. The frame here is this. When you read Stormwatch 0, you really don't need Stormwatch 1. Stormwatch 1 at this point created a level of excitement for some of these new characters, and mostly for Wildstorm Productions, just as a competitor to Marvel Comics. We have a trope here too. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. You spend the whole day working and you read this and you just see the progress. You see this, like, you already kind of see the production getting better, the artwork getting better, the writing way more consistent when it comes to panel to panel, page to page. You get all of these things, and it's, it juices you up. It excites you, because part of the feeling part of the reason why it feels so good to read Stormwatch 0 is knowing that most of the world thinks that these books are trash. They want to throw them under the bus. Throw them under the bus. Come on, guys. You guys know what's coming. Throw them under the bus, right? And even with Stormwatch 1, Wildstorm's already collaborating. We looked at this last episode, or last night. They're already collaborating. Huge collaboration with Valiant Comics. Valiant Comics, excuse me, at the time, was doing the best comics in all of comics. We have Deathblow coming. We have Cybernary coming. We have trading cards coming, right? Wildcats 0 advertised here. Newcomer Brett Booth. Killer cover here. I'm not sure if they ever reused this image either. I like this cover more than what we saw last night. Advertisement for Wizard Magazine. Cyber Force 3 with Pitt. All right. So within the same year, within a couple months, we get this quality jump, don't we? Look at the pages. We get better paper. We get Brett Booth here with layout help. Brett Booth is getting a layout assistance here. And we get the one name, Sal Regla. Sal Reg never gets enough credit. And I will say this before we get into exactly what happens in this issue. If we look at the faces of Sal and the mouths, I'm not joking, aka Padders. It is very eerily similar to the early J. Scott Gen 13. Very similar. So much to the point, I will say that they were trading pages and panels to keep a deadline. So unlike last night, and just to review last night, the last Wildstorm episode, Wildcats 1, we later released Wildcats 0. Wildcats 0 butts right into Wildcats 1. This essentially is just one thick issue. And it's a fun read. We get a lot of the, because I had a little bit more time to think about it, we get a lot of the personalities here. And we get some decent action. But this, overall, a little bit disappointing. This is absolutely thrilling. And I remember reading this when I was younger and just saying, man, like Stormwatch is the book. Stormwatch was the Image book at the time. Because it had cool characters, good action, and like there was this story emerging. So before we crack this open, I just want to get into into a little bit of I just feel like we should keep this going. We've been doing some Zero issues recently. So what's the stack of Zero issues? Well, we know I look at Cyber Force Zero as one of the worst Zero issues of the era. I would put Jack Kirby's Secret Saga on top of Cyber Force Zero. I will put Wildcat Zero on top of Jack Kirby's Secret City Saga and Stormwatch #1. So I think what we'll do soon, we'll do Youngblood Zero. We got to put Youngblood Zero in this stack. And then we're just going to keep going at that point. So back to the Stormwatch tropey trope right here. Do you guys like how we do the format here? We just, because you can't just crack open an issue. I'm learning this. There's a lot of prerequisite before we get into the guts of the story. But we have, again, seeing this on the shelf, you were like, holy crap, like who are these guys? I love them all. This is Nautica, this is Flashpoint, and this is Backlash. You were in. These characters are great. Flashpoint, believe it or not, is an upgrade on Cyclops. The powers of Flashpoint are 100 times cooler than anything about Cyclops. Yeah, so we get this opening. But even the most vigilant watchdog can fall victim to a small fleet. Or in this case, a cloaked spacecraft. So we get like essentially Babylon 5, Deep Space Nine. We learned that Stormwatch Prime, or the Stormwatch headquarters, what's it called? It's called Weather One, I believe, right? No. Skywatch, I'm sorry. The Skywatch here has 8,000 people, which is, again, of this time, you were watching a lot of Star Trek on TV if you were into science fiction. To me, that's cooler than a cucumber. But yeah, so we get a cloak ship, they dock, and then we cut into a training session of Fiji and Battalion. And again, we just get refamiliarized with who each character is, what their powers are. Thank you, captions. Now, this is Brett Booth here. Brett Booth is getting a big assistance here. It's either he's better with layouts or they hammered good layouts into him that quickly. But his layouts have grown exponentially since this issue. Exponentially. But it's hard to see the Brett Booth style from the coloring. The coloring muddying the style of the illustrator. This is a through line through all of Wildstorm, by the way. All of Wildstorm Productions. But we do get like the Brett Booth face here. Very distinctive. Yeah, so they go back and forth, and then the guys from the cloak ship, they want some revenge, and they just start executing Stormwatch, personnel one by one. We find out that they kill about 12 people, and they run into Battalion Fiji in the training hologram, basically in their own danger room, and they show up and they nuke them. They go right through them. They look, as the casings pour down upon the ground like a torrential shower of death. It is done, Pedro. We have been avenged. So Pedro is this guy's brother, and he's like, 15 years ago, you got my brother. Now I'm going to get you. So it's a family revenge. Battalion recognizes him like right away. He's like, oh, it's you. But yeah, they blast Fiji and Battalion, but they're still standing there. And guess what? It's a gotcha. They themselves are holograms. You know, if you ever seen Total Recall, we love that gimmick. And yeah, so Battalion just shows up behind them, hammers them. These faces here are a little bit wide, a little bit different than what a Brett Booth face was at the time. But we do get a little bit of these like very nice 3/4 shots, and we get one very soon. But yeah, so Battalion's like, look, Fiji's like, hey, who was that crazy guy? Just a bad memory that won't go away. Don't bother wasting sympathy on him, Fiji. Save that for the families, for the people he killed today. Like, that is heavy stuff. But yeah, we cut to Battalion in a shower. We're now at what you would call part 2, according to the credits. So now we're at Sal Riga and Alex Garner. And here's the trope. So the trope is Battalion is just in like an uncompromised position, mostly half naked, and he gets visited by a hot blonde babe. I love this as a trope. I wish they just kept it going. I wish the Authority would work in this trope. But yeah, so go back and forth, and he's like, Christina. No, keep in mind, Christina in the future takes over for Stormwatch. She becomes Weatherman. And she's like, hey, everything that happened today here on base, on our 8,000 personnel Skywatch base, it's classified. But Fiji said you were a little, Fiji over here, nice guy. She said, he said you were like a little perturbed. I thought I would just show up and see how it's going. He goes, just how long have you been here? Long enough. And she goes, don't flatter yourself. Come on. You right? Flatter yourself. Do it. But yeah, and he goes, look, girl. He's like, look, it's all in the report, Christine. You got your privileges of power. Find out for yourself. And he basically just tells her to go scratch. And then we get into this very nice monologue here, internal monologue, and we just find out that Battalion is a man of scars. He's scarred up like the Dark Knight is. And we get into this. So I don't know if this space station is the same space station that we saw in it looks different, but these space stations could be the same that we got in Wildcat Zero. But basically, the space station, same origin as the zombies in Night of the Living Dead, the original one. There's like a Venus comet that crosses over the this Monitor 1 here. Like, Monitor 1 is the prototype of Skywatch. But yeah, crosses over Monitor 1, obliterates everyone. And then, like, we have our birth of, like, the supers or the hypers or just the superheroes in general. This is like gamma radiation. Hell of an illustration here. This is what I mean. We get some good, nice 3/4 shots. But yeah, and then Battalion's father, he's a part of War Guard. And then, we get a little bit of, like, the birth of what we would call Stormwatch 1. And then we cut to Battalion, basically facing off to become team leader. Egos escalate. We get a nice little Rocky punch here. And then, lo and behold, we get... So, real quick, too. We get what's his name? John Windsor. This is John Windsor. He's the guy that first puts together Stormwatch. But yeah, so they're at the UN. They get attacked, and these guys are like, we're the World Liberation Front. America's capitalistic, blah, 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 blah. Does that sound familiar? And then, Stormwatch Prime, or Stormwatch 1 needs to get into action. So they make references of Backlash here. And Backlash is their trainer. He's like their drill sergeant. So they're like, hey, we need Backlash to show up. But during all of this, Battalion demonstrates leadership abilities and he impresses everyone. And this is Flashpoint here. This is why Flashpoint destroys Cyclops. He can control, look how cool this is. He can control the beams of his eyes to wrap around someone and just nuke the dude in back of Nikita here. I love it. Yeah, and you see here, like someone's trying to come up and back of him, nukes him. Great display of these powers. And then, like, essentially, we set up what happened earlier. This is Pedro's brother. So, Pedro's brother shoots Battalion, and Battalion's not fully, battle-hardened with his cybernetic suit that enhances his psychic abilities, but he basically bricks his brother. And then Pedro's got to drag his brother off. They both, basically get arrested. Great pull away shot here. I love this shot. But yeah, again, we get all the personalities. The man got what he deserved. You just did your job, Jackson, and leave it at that. I just like the readiness and the military tone of this era of Wildstorm Productions, and Brandon Chow is to thank for it, and he had a very Tom Clancy way of making his character speak. But yeah, so we get Pedro gets taken away. We get hey, Jackson, you're team leader. So we get one of the guys that escaped. And this, I don't want to spoil this, but this girl shows up. She shows up in Gen 13, okay? And she's like, well, And he's like, look, they're already, they're doing amazing things. We couldn't keep up with them. And basically, she's like, well, look, we have to move on to Phase 2. And her Phase 2 is Project Genesis, okay? And, Genesis is Gen 13. So, but her Project Genesis is Gen 12 that predates Gen 13. So this takes place, we get a little bit of continuity. So maybe next episode we'll detail a little bit of Gen 12, and then we'll get into Wetworks. But Wetworks is almost inconsequential to Wildstorm. It really is. You can do all of Wildstorm and not really dabble into Wetworks. But we get the announcement of the team. And, we get Jackson here. Again, this is a character study piece, character study issue. But Jackson he's an emotional train wreck. He's in a glass cage of emotion. Now, for the sake of Malcolm's future, I have to believe the dream too. And with it, hope for a better tomorrow. So he kind of cuts the deal to keep his brother, who we see at the end of issue 1, his brother gets pulled into everything. But all of issue 1 is about him saving his brother. Here we get a little bit more detail that if I'm in, you spare my brother. If we read this in continuity, by the end of the next issue, his brother is in, and then everyone here, these two are dead, and then we get the founder. The founder's dead as well. John Harden, right? I always forget his name. What's his name? What's his name? Here we go. Brain fart, guys. Here we go. John Windsor. I'm sorry, John Windsor. I said John Harden. I don't know why. And quick note, guys. Look how awesome this gun's rendered. Look at this cannon. I thought this was the coolest thing as a kid. And people, these designs are... They're there. Look, Jim Lee is not a great designer. So I think some of the people he had coming on helped helped sell some of his designs. But Backlash was always a great design. I still stand by Jim Lee not being 1,000% of a killer costume or costume designer for comics, but he did do some cool stuff. But guys, I'm not joking. Stormwatch during this time was the best read at Image Comics, and I can't wait to bring you. So we might do Stormwatch like 2, 3, and 4, and then do Wildcats 2, 3, and 4. So those could be 2 complimentary episodes as well. I haven't made decisions regarding what the play is for Wetworks, but I feel like the next good play is Gen 12. Love you guys. Rock and roll.